Der österreichische Popsänger Falco ist bei einem Autounfall in der Dominikanischen Republik ums Leben gekommen.
Falco was a superstar, an Austrian musician who found fame and fortune, but was tortured by the ups and downs of his success, always striving for more, always seeking to be understood. Falco ran away from his hometown of Vienna to find some answers, but never returned. This is his story. Austrian singer Johann Hölzel, known by his stage name Falco, always felt a burden on his shoulders. He was plagued by low self-esteem and self-doubt. He was born on February 19, 1957, in Vienna, Austria, as the only surviving triplet, a loss he carried with him throughout life. His parents were working class, and he had the importance of hard work etched into him from childhood. At the age of 4, it was clear that he had a talent for music, reproducing songs he heard on the radio on his small piano given for his birthday. At the age of 5, he was certified as having absolute pitch by the Vienna Music Academy. Despite his talent, his life was full of ups and downs, and he never quite felt like he had made it. His father left him when he was around 10 years old, and he was raised by his mother and grandmother. He was expelled from a Catholic school, and as a young man, Johann was restless. He couldn't settle on a career path. He tried his hand as a trainee clerk at an insurance company, dropped out of the Vienna Conservatory of Music, and spent time in the military, none of which interested him. By the age of 20, he was busking on the streets and playing gigs in bars. Music had always been something he enjoyed, and he had always seen himself as a musician, dreaming of the big stage. Just how big? He was about to find out. While playing bass on the streets of the Austrian city of Mödling, Johann caught the attention of Wicker Adam, who invited him to join one of Austria's biggest cult bands. Johann accepted the offer and took on the name Falco, after his idol, Falco Weissflog, an East German ski jumper. On his way to stardom, Falco seemed to have found his purpose. For once, he was settled and had focus. However, he stood out from the rest as he performed on the Viennese underground club scene. He initially performed under pseudonyms like Johann Hölzel before adopting the name Falco. He had short hair due to his military service and dressed in sunglasses and suits. This distinction led to manager Markus Spiegel signing him in 1981 as a solo artist. His single, Der Kommissar, released the following year, propelled him to stardom. The song reached #1 in Austria and spread across Europe and beyond. Falco's single, Der Kommissar, became a major hit in Europe in 1982, although it did not achieve the same success in the US. He joined the ranks of musical greats like Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, Liszt, and Strauss. However, unlike them, he turned to the genre of electro-pop. It was a niche genre, but one for which he became famous. But Falco found his success to be a mixed blessing. His schedule was now filled with endless interviews, promotional tours, and lonely nights in hotel rooms, and the pressure to produce equally good subsequent work was mounting. This proved to be a burden that eroded his self-confidence, driving him to seek solace in alcohol and drug use, a decision that would later haunt him. He epitomized sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and was known to be a womanizer while he dominated the Austrian electro-pop scene. But he was always filled with self-doubt and longed for stable relationships. To those who knew him, Falco appeared to be living two completely separate lives, which tortured him. In his private life, he was the relatively quiet Johann Hölzel, while in the public eye, he was the music superstar Falco. He could never just be himself, and this inner demon would haunt him throughout his career. Falco's second album, Junge Römer, did not achieve the same success as his debut, but he found immense success again with his third album, Falco 3, which included the hit single, Rock Me Amadeus. He made some changes to his musical style, and wrote many of the lyrics in English to try and break into the US and UK markets. It worked, as Rock Me Amadeus topped the US pop charts. But the success of this album was bittersweet. Instead of basking in its glory, Falco was depressed. He was torn in two by the success of his music. Ever the perfectionist, he was never happy with his work and always strived for more. When his earlier single, Der Kommissar, was a hit across Europe, his response was, "It just makes me sad because I know I will never achieve such success again." But he was wrong. Rock Me Amadeus had been even more successful, yet he repeated his disheartening conclusion that he knew he could never repeat its success. This time, he also knew that although he could make a fortune in America, they would never truly understand him as an artist. In fact, although he was hugely successful and popular in Austria and other parts of Europe, most Americans would describe him as a one-hit wonder. The ups and downs of his musical career were also mirrored in his personal life. Falco had a long-term relationship with Isabella Viktovic, with whom he had a daughter. In 1988, he and Isabella married, but their relationship was rocky, and it ended the following year. He always claimed he loved his wife, and of course his daughter, but yet another downer was about to hit. Falco had always had his suspicions about his daughter. When she was 7 years old, a paternity test revealed that he was not her biological father, a discovery that deeply affected him. He had often turned to alcohol, but Falco didn't just have problems with drinking. There were also rumors that he had money problems. He was still receiving royalties from the Amadeus hit, which kept him in the lifestyle to which he had now become accustomed. But from a fiscal standpoint, it made sense to live somewhere else. In 1996, Falco moved to the Dominican Republic to escape the Austrian media and for tax reasons. He felt like they always found fault with him no matter what he did. All he wanted was to be celebrated and adored. He needed some respite and felt like he could recharge in the Dominican Republic and would have the time to rewrite his new album. He was a perfectionist, and although the album was pretty much finished, he kept picking at it, adding bits and taking bits out. Falco believed that living in the Dominican Republic would solve his problems. He hoped to find peace and finish his new album, but his struggles with alcohol and drugs continued. Despite efforts for a fresh start, his behavior remained unpredictable. On February 6, 1998, Falco had a personal training session. Afterwards, he went to the tourist disco, where he started drinking heavily. So much so that the waitress had to interrupt him and refused to serve him any more alcohol. Reluctantly, Falco left the bar and walked to his SUV, a Mitsubishi Pajero. He sat in it in the parking lot for an hour. The sun was shining, and Falco did not have the air conditioning on. The minutes ticked by. His hair was a mess. His clothes were scruffy. The usually suave, neatly dressed man now looked disheveled. His girlfriend had broken up with him a few weeks before. Perhaps Falco didn't care about anything anymore. Perhaps he had reached the end of his tether. Nobody knows exactly what was going through his head at the time, but something terrible was about to happen. At 4:40 p.m. on February 6, 1998, Falco turned the key in the ignition and sped out of the parking lot onto the highway that linked the towns of Villa Montellano and Puerto Plata. He drove straight into the path of a bus traveling at high speed. The impact crumpled his car into an almost unrecognizable mess. Reports suggest he passed away at a medical center in Puerto Plata. He was just 2 weeks shy of his 41st birthday.
Am Freitag starb Falco bei einem Autounfall in der Dominikanischen Republik.
But for his fans, there were questions. Everybody was talking about it back home in Austria. Had Falco simply been careless while under the influence of drugs and alcohol? Or had he deliberately driven recklessly, perhaps as a means to escape his tumultuous life? Some say the crash was deliberate, but most who knew him believed that it was a complete accident. He had been planning a comeback, as evidenced by the album he was eminently releasing. If he hadn't been such a perfectionist, it would have been released already. The autopsy revealed that he had alcohol, cocaine, and cannabis in his system at the time of the crash. He had suffered a severe head injury, and his left leg was broken by the impact. His body was flown back to Austria, where he was given a public viewing before his burial. Although the news of his passing barely made headlines around the world, in Austria, the news was a shock and felt deeply by many. On February 14, 1998, more than 6,000 mourners followed the solemn procession to Vienna's Zentralfriedhof Central Cemetery. The city's mayor was among the mourners. Falco's casket was carried to its final resting place on the shoulders of members of the outsider Austrian Motorcycle Club. The grass around Falco's grave is worn smooth, just like it is alongside Beethoven's and Schubert's. The album he was working on just before the accident was released posthumously and was titled Out of the Dark, Into the Light, perhaps a fitting title given the tragedy that occurred. That same year, Falco's friends and producers, Rob and Ferdy Boland, released an EP named Tribute to Falco, which features samples of his music. Falco's music remains popular and celebrated. His hits like Rock Me Amadeus and Der Kommissar are still played and enjoyed today, decades after their release. His unique blend of pop, rock, and electronic music, combined with his charismatic and sometimes controversial persona, has left an indelible mark on the music world. Tributes to Falco include permanently reserved tables in Viennese restaurants, highlighting his enduring cultural significance. Musician Thomas Lang said that Falco won't be remembered as the biggest Austrian pop star, but as the only Austrian pop star. Falco's legacy is one of complexity and contradiction. He was a man of immense talent who reached great heights of fame and fortune, but struggled with the personal costs of his success. His music continues to be celebrated, leaving an indelible mark on both the Austrian and international music scenes. His life story serves as a poignant reminder of the pressures and pitfalls of fame. Despite his tragic end, Falco's music lives on, a testament to his genius and lasting impact on the world.